In history, the biggest incident of skydiving was due to a small mistake. This mistake was realized when 18 skydivers had jumped from the plane and now there was no way back. After jumping from the plane, all the excitement of 18 skydivers turned into fear. These were all experienced skydivers, but unfortunately, their years of experience did not work here. In this incident, 16 skydivers were killed, and the story told by the remaining 2 skydivers made everyone shudder. Hello friends, you are watching Curious World, where we brings you real and heart-touching stories. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon. Viewers, today the world remembers this incident as the Lake Erie Disaster. Lake Erie is the 4th largest lake in North America and the 11th largest lake in the world. 13 kilometers south of Lake Erie, there is a small airfield called Otner Airport. On August 27, 1967, 30 skydivers arrived at this airport because they were offered a free flight. The B-25 bomber plane used in World War II, which was modified by a private company, offered these skydivers a free flight. When the skydivers started sitting in the plane one by one, there was less space in the B-25 bomber. And due to the fear of overweight, the pilot selected only 20 divers at the last moment. This selection was done based on the experience and skill level of the divers. The remaining 10 divers were disappointed that they were not selected, but they did not know that this decision of the pilot would save their lives. The plan was that the B-25 bomber would take off from Otner Airport and go up to 20,000 feet while turning around, and will come up to this airport and drop 18 divers. After this, he will go further up, and the last 2 divers will jump from a height of 30,000 feet. All these divers had to land back at Otner Airport with the help of parachutes. Due to bad weather, the flight could not take off in the morning, but the B-25 bomber took off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All the divers sitting in the plane were very excited because they were getting a free flight, and it was their first experience of jumping from a bomber plane. After the takeoff of the B-25, a small Cessna 180 plane also took off from the same airport. It had to stay at an altitude of 12,000 feet and capture skydivers' jumps in the camera. On the other hand, the B-25, in which the divers were present, was going up while spiraling. Due to bad weather, the pilots of both planes were connected to the nearby air traffic control tower, which was telling them their location. Finally, after an hour, the B-25 bomber had reached an altitude of 20,000 feet. The pilot radioed the control tower and found his location. At that time, there was no GPS technology, so if the weather was bad, the pilots had to get help from the control tower. The control tower told the B-25 pilot that he was 9 kilometers away from Otner Airport. And according to this information, the B-25's location on the map was something like this. That is, now they had reached near the drop zone. Just a minute after this, the pilot of the Cessna 180 also contacted the air traffic controller and told his location according to the B-25. Because due to bad weather, the pilot of the Cessna could not see the B-25. The air traffic controller told the pilot of the Cessna that he was 9 kilometers behind the B-25. That is, if you look at the map, if the B-25's location was 9 kilometers away from Otner Airfield, then the Cessna's location was 9 kilometers behind B-25 and 18 kilometers away from Otner Airport. After a few minutes, at an altitude of 20,000 feet, the B-25 pilot found his location again. And this time, the controller told him that he had now reached Otner Airport. On this, the pilot indicated to 18 skydivers to jump. The small mistake that was going to kill the skydivers has actually happened, but for now, no one knows. At this altitude, the temperature was minus 30 degrees Celsius. That's why all the skydivers had an extra layer of jumpsuits on them. All the skydivers jumped from the B-25 at the same time so that they could make their formation together during the free fall. At that time, they could see a layer of clouds below them, and they had to deploy their parachutes after crossing the clouds. They all started enjoying their free fall. But when they crossed the thick layer of clouds, all their excitement suddenly turned into fear. What they see is that there is no ground below them. but deep water of Lake Erie far, far away. At this time, their height was only about 3,000 feet, and everyone immediately deployed their parachutes, in the hope that somehow they could land on the border of the lake near the ground in the water. But unfortunately, this could not happen. The place where they landed in the water was at least 10 kilometers away from the ground. They thought that after landing in the water, they would immediately get out of their harness and wait for help by swimming. But it didn't go as they thought. The layers of warm clothes they were wearing, because of their weight, it was not possible for them to swim in the water. Two of them were such divers who had already removed their shoes and unnecessary weight before landing. Only these two divers were able to swim in the water for a while and were later rescued. Unfortunately, the remaining 16 divers were not able to survive, and their bodies were not seen by anyone for the next few days. The last body was recovered after a week. This incident made headlines all over the world, and to find out the real reason for this incident, an investigation team was also set up to find out where B-25 had dropped them and who was at fault in this. The air traffic controller said that when B-25 dropped the skydivers, they were 10 kilometers from Lake Erie on the ground above Otner Airport. They believed that the skydivers drifted due to the strong winds and reached Lake Erie. In fact, it was also possible that the skydivers really drifted and reached Lake Erie. But even if you believe the ATC for a second, it means that the winds drifted the skydivers a total of 20 kilometers. 10 kilometers from Otner Airport to Lake Erie, and then 10 kilometers further into Lake Erie. When the experts did rough calculations, based on the speed of the wind that day and the height of the diving, it was found that the skydivers could only drift for up to 5 kilometers. That is, there was something wrong with the ATC statement. This was the claim of the ATC, but the pilots of B-25 and Cessna said that they were told the wrong location. Finally, the investigation came to the conclusion that when both pilots asked the ATC for their location, the shift of the controllers had changed, and the location that the second controller told B-25 was actually the location of Cessna. That is, when the B-25 pilot was told that he was at Otner Airport, actually that time Cessna 180 was at the airport, and B-25 at Lake Erie. In addition to this, the divers and pilots made the mistake of going against the laws of aviation and jumping without seeing the target. In the memory of the 16 pilots, for the next 2 years, other skydivers wore floating equipment and deliberately landed themselves in Lake Erie. In 1972, the court held the Federal Aviation Authority responsible for the death of these 16 divers, and the license of the B-25 pilot was suspended forever. In addition to this, a rule was made for skydivers that they will jump 50 kilometers away from any water. I hope you will like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next great video.